Hey yo guys, I'm back here to give you my predictions for tonight's UFC 97 Redemption pay-per-view. If I got enough time in here to give my thoughts. I know it's maybe now 2 weeks late, but on the whole Dana White video blog catastrophe. I really should have done it during when the time period it happened, but I was just so busy with all the WrestleMania events, covering all of them, and so I really didn't get to give my thoughts at that. But I plan on trying to do it now. But let's give my thoughts here on the UFC 97 pay-per-view, emanating live from the Bell Center in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Their second event in Montreal and Canada as a whole. Really, I think it's pretty amazing how this card sold out a lot quicker than UFC 83, considering, you had GSP on that card against Matt Serra, and he's not even on the card, and this one sold out quicker. Is it potentially, maybe the name Chuck Liddell and Anderson Silva on there? I don't think it's that. I just think Canadian fans love MMA, and really the UFC's only for some reason gone to Quebec when it's also legal in Alberta. I think they could do very well in, a Calgary or Edmonton. But I guess, they're trying to just capitalize on one market. But anyways, the card looks really good. I mean, the undercard is a barrage of Canadian MMA fighters. You got your Jason McDonald's, your TJ Grants, David Loiseau making his return to the UFC, Dennis Kang, Sam Stout, many more. Really, it's a pretty good undercard, I have to say that, and it has a tough 8 matchup between Vinny Magalesh and Elliot Marshall, which could be a grappling affair. But anyways, we're here to just do the main card, as that's really most of the fights everyone's going to see. We start things off between Steve Cantwell and Luis Arthur Khan, or Kane, however you want to say that. Of course, Kane is remembered for being the one to defeat Sokoju and vanish him from the UFC back at UFC 89, and I believe that one was in Ireland. I believe that's where that one was. But anyway, both these guys have the same amount of skill set. They're sort of an equal type of fighter. I mean, one has a 9-1 record, the other has a 7-1 record. To me, how do I see this fight going down? Really, I think it's going to be a feeling out process at the start, and then eventually they're just going to slug it out. And I think in that department, I'll give the advantage to Kane. I think he's going to be the one to do better there, and I don't know if Cantwell will like that. He'll probably shoot in for a takedown. And really, that's to me where he's going to want to have the fight, but I don't think it's a real place he wants to have the fight. I mean, he's got the better wrestling, definitely, than Kane, but I think that's really, to me, where Kane will lose the fight if he gets, put down, gets taken down and is ground and pounded, or, a lucky punch from Steve Cantwell. I just personally see Kane to, barrage Cantwell, have the better striking, probably, and rock him. And that's how I see this happening. Probably a TKO victory for Kane in the third round. That's where I would see this happen. Either second or third round. I'm not sure where, but that's where I see this happening. Then we have the next fight, which is Cheick Kongo versus Antoni Hardonk. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a kickboxing bout in the UFC. I find it funny since, the UFC, they're all about, we're all about the MMA athletes and, guys with whole different fighting stances against each other. Well, this is two kickboxers. Kongo, a very well renowned kickboxer. Same with Hardonk. But to me, overall, I mean, if they, they're obviously going to use the kickboxing, but I give, Kongo the advantage on, the wrestling and the fact that he's just such a powerful dude. I think he's going to use his power to, take down Hardonk, which is something, with his wrestling as well. I think that's where he gets it, and he probably mounts and grounds and pounds for a victory, or, uses his kickboxing and to, keep scoring points as well as the wrestling, and, just have, full control. That's how I see this happening. Either Kongo wins via a TKO or a decision. That's where I see that going. Then we go to the next fight, which is Brian Stann versus Kryzstof Soszynski. Of course, we all know Kryzstof Soszynski was on the last season of The Ultimate Fighter. One of the top guys to win it in the light division, but unfortunately he fell victim to Vinny Magalesh, who eventually lost to the eventual winner in Ryan Bader. But anyways, how do you look at this fight? Well, we all know about Brian Stann being a Marine and having a fantastic story, but really, the story can only go so far. I mean, Stann is a good fighter, but I don't think he's really gonna fare that well here against, Soszynski trains with Dan Henderson. He's got many more fights under his belt. I mean, he's a veteran. I wouldn't want to say a veteran, but he's got a lot of more fights under his belt, and that's how I see this being to his advantage. The fact that he's fought more, I think he'll play that into his advantage. Plus, he's a half Canadian, so I think he's going to play off the Canadian whole atmosphere and dictate the pace and eventually get I'd say, first-round TKO of Brian Stann. Then we go to the two big fights that are headlining this card. We got Cheick Liddell versus Mauricio Shogun Hua, basically in a loser-leaves town match, if you want to throw the pro wrestling spin on it. You got Liddell, who's lost 3 of his last 4. His last loss was that crushing KO at the hands of Rashad Evans, who turned the Iceman into the puddle, if you don't mind me saying. And you got Shogun, who, really, he's 1-1 in the UFC, and his last performance against Mark the Hammer Coleman was awful. I mean, Coleman was gassed early in the first, or maybe midway through the first, and definitely early in the second, and he couldn't finish the job. I mean, he even was gassed. It was Shogun trying to finish a gassed Coleman. But then again, you have to look at it this way. Shogun had very serious knee injuries, and when you have serious knee injuries, you really can't train all that well. Of course, like, the knee is one of the most vital parts of the human body, so that's one way I look at it. Of course, this fight has been a fight that's I wanted to see for quite some time. Back in 2005 when Cheick was the man in the UFC at light heavyweight, and you got Shogun, who was the man in Pride as well. So this is a fight people would have, tented out to see. But now it's a whole different circumstances. People really want to see, have these guys really, gotten too old, have their wars caught up to them, which is, I think, the case of these mixed martial arts. I mean, Wanderlei Silva's a big example. All those wars in Pride, he gets to the UFC, and I mean, he's down pretty early. I mean, he had that vicious war with Cheick, but then it was really like quick victory over Keith Jardine, and then that loss to Rampage. But anyways, this fight, the way I look at it, Shogun has more to prove, because if Shogun loses, he's out of the UFC. Now, will he find a spot back in Japan? Yes, I think he would go back to Dream. I should say, because, he likes the rule aspects there, and plus his brother just went back to fight for Dream, so I think he would want to be back in Japan. But still, I think Shogun likes to have the spotlight in the UFC, want to carry the Hua name in the UFC. Cheick, if he loses this fight, not like he's going to be unemployed. I mean, he may want to leave. He still probably wants to fight, but I think Dana would want to keep him around to be, a marketing figure, or, just a face around. But I maybe would Cheick leave to, fight for a Strikeforce or an Affliction? That is a possibility, but I don't really see that happening. I think he'd want to stick around with the UFC. How do I see this fight going? Really, I think this is going to be a war. I think this could be Liddell Silva from UFC 79. I think that's where we could go into there, because, both guys know it's on the line, and they really want to prove something. I think definitely who is going to clinch. He's going to use the knees. He's going to do stuff of that nature. Cheick, as it's been well documented, a big striker, and if you strike back at him, he likes being pushed back and then eventually come forward and down. So that's where I see this one. I think this is going to be a war, and I'm going to make my prediction to be a a decision victory for Mauricio Shogun Hua. That's how I see this one happening. I think this could be a great fight if Shogun says if Shogun is where he says he is, and if Liddell, the Liddell of old for at least one night. That's how I see this happening. Then we go to the main event, which is for the UFC Middleweight Championship. You got Anderson Silva versus Thales Leites. Really, this fight, not to knock Leites or anything, he's a pretty good fighter, but, he's definitely out of his class here. To me, it's just the UFC throwing a fight for Silva just so that, one, he can, get another gun out of his contract, and two, so that he can set this record of having, won 9 straight and, tie the record for title defenses with Matt Hughes. So that's how I see this one happening. I mean, Leites' biggest win was over Nate Marquardt back at UFC 85, which, interesting enough, was originally supposed to be the fight between, I believe, Chuck and Shogun before Shogun's knee, and then it was Chuck and Rashad before that eventually got moved to UFC 88 due to Liddell's injury. But anyway, I'm getting off topic here. Leites' biggest victory was over Nate Marquardt, but that was more in controversy due to those point deductions, and, you know, that's why Leites won. I mean, Leites has got a couple, you know, nice victories there, but you're in there against Anderson Silva. I mean, you know, this is a pretty big thing for, you know, Brazilians. It's the first all-Brazilian main event of a UFC show, which I think is a good thing. But really, I think Silva's going to want to prove that he's, you know, still the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world in some people's eyes. He's going to try and, you know, show that, hey, the fight with Patrick Cote was something different. You know, I wasn't on my game. That wasn't the Anderson Silva you're accustomed to. I'm going to prove that I am that. And I'm predicting a first-round TKO for Anderson Silva. On the ground, maybe you would give a slight edge to Leites, but I think Silva's still really impressive on the ground. Stand-up is for sure Anderson Silva to get the victory. But anyways, I guess, you know, my quick thoughts on this whole Dana White Lorretta Hunt thing from, you know, his video blog. I mean, does Dana have a point in some aspects? I think, you know, one of the whole reasons Dana, you know, lost his mind was, you know, Dana lost his mind over really nothing, about a little article about managers not being backstage. I mean, that's not, to me, the biggest thing you want to blow up for. But, I mean, Dana kind of lost his mind because, you know, Lorretta Hunt is with Sherdog, and we all know that Dana hates Sherdog, the whole Josh Gross thing. Plus, you know, it's the fact that, one of the main things is that Lorretta Hunt was involved in a Matt Lindland documentary, and this documentary basically is sort of plays off the fact, which is in this little article that she wrote, was that the UFC was protecting Rich Franklin, as, you know, the Golden Boy didn't give Lindland the shot, and, you know, that he's really the middleweight in the world, what have you. He didn't get his shot with, you know, Franklin, and blah. Also the fact that, you know, he left, and, you know, they offered him a spot back on, you know, I believe it was season 3 of Tough, which was the, when everyone was coming back, you know, the second chance one. I can't remember the official name of it, but still, they offered him that and take it. So, I mean, Lindland's just mad about that, and I think Dana's more mad because Lorretta Hunt's involved in that project, which is, you know, complete crap that, you know, the UFC was protecting Rich Franklin because the man fought Anderson Silva twice. Lost them both viciously. So really, that's just where they're coming from. But I guess the whole thing is, if I was Dana, I wouldn't use that language, especially towards a female reporter. And plus, you're the figurehead of this company. I mean, I know the swearing is your gimmick, and, you know, it was a pretty fiery promo, but I wouldn't use the swearing, especially calling her a fucking bitch. That's not really what you want to do. I mean, could you imagine if, you know, David Stern of the NBA, Gary Bettman of the NHL, and Roger Goodell of the NFL, and even Bud Selig of the MLB, if they had used that language, they'd have been gone in a day. Like, done. I mean, just because Dana's maybe a different person and he swears a lot and people like that, but, you know, his you know, words to her weren't really the smartest choice. And plus, you know, this sport is growing, and you're the #1 brand of that. So, you know, you're trying to get maybe some new sponsorships. I mean, you know, Dana tries to compare his company with the NFL. Well, the NFL has a wide variety of sponsorships. I mean, they have, yeah, Anheuser-Busch, which the UFC has, and they weren't very happy with that whole blog. But, I mean, you could try and, you know, you're trying to get the likes of, like, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo products, anything like that. You know, a big name to be on, you know, your gone. So, that doesn't really bode well to me on that. I think you should have maybe chose better words. And plus, also the fact you left this thing up forever. This thing was up for like a full day before they decided to take it down because it was bad. Are the blogs a good thing? Yeah, I think they're a fun little thing to, you know, to show what goes on behind the scenes. I think they're pretty cool. But maybe, you know, his choice of words weren't the greatest thing ever to do. I think there was something else I was going to try and hit on, but I can't remember at the moment. But yeah, anyways, that's really going to be it for this video. I am out. Peace.